Saturday tailgate, sweet sundress.
I mean, that is a college football anthem right there, Savannah. I mean, girls of the SEC, we know you're kind of the girl of, all the conferences and the girl of college football. Had a little car problems, but thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Yeah, why don't you just give everybody, tell them where they can follow you on X, your pod, all that type of stuff. And thank you for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Yes. I'm sorry. It is wholly my fault that we got started late. I apologize. Never buy a Tesla, or maybe buy a Tesla, but then just know it might do crazy stuff to you. I don't really know. Yeah, I'm Savannah. You can find me on Twitter at Savannah, the number 2 and the letter J, just like my thing here. I do have a podcast during football season that recaps the ACC. And then it also has an interview a week, and sometimes it's players, sometimes it's coaches, sometimes it's support staff, family members of coaches, that kind of thing, just kind of behind the scenes. And it's called On the Sidelines with Sav.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Well, yeah, speaking of the ACC, I was told by our buddy Dave Burton, who commented the other day, I can't mention the Giovanni Bernard game-winning kickoff return against NC State, so I'm not mentioning that. But, that was the highlight. Sadly, as a North Carolina football fan, that's been the highlight of his fandom for North Carolina. So kind of a sad existence for the Tar Heels fans. Hello? Oh. Okay, I can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, I think you muted yourself.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
You're good now.
Is there anything better than your rival having a bitter existence? I think the answer is
no. So we'll get kind of into some conference previews. I want to play a game, obviously, called What is More Southern, so that should be good. I know you're a Southern transplant. I've lived in the South for 2 years. We'll talk about Maryland's a Southern state, but we'll get right into, I guess, the biggest storyline, maybe one or two that you're kind of really anticipating and looking forward to this college football season.
Yeah, I'd say the first one is the LSU Ole Miss game. If there's anyone who's into college football and they're not choosing that as one of the options, they're not into college football. I think it'll be so funny, so entertaining, so interesting. I think one of the biggest keys and I say this all the time, is people hate Lane Kiffin. They love Lane Kiffin. They love to hate Lane Kiffin, all the things, but that man is who he's always said he was going to be. And so I think it's very entertaining. And whether you love him or you hate him, it's still entertaining. And I think it's also really incredible because I do truly believe that he is the offensive genius of college football. I don't think that there's anyone better than him at this point who calls better plays than he does. So all of it's entertaining.
Yeah, it was really tough to support him after, and I've been kind of a Lane guy, and I thought, that Ole Miss team with Trinidad Chambliss, he wouldn't have gotten the best out of him unless it was Lane Kiffin, right? And yeah. I wanted to see him just kind of finish the job, and I understand it's a business. I'm not naive and be like, you owe it to the players, all that kind of stuff. It's a business where adults, people are going to lie. When people leave their job, they do that. But just the kind of almost pompousness and arroganceness of oh, why didn't they let me finish what we started? It's bro, read the room, you know what I mean? Kind of thing. But yeah, that is going to be an absolute war. And that is that's in Oxford, correct?
Correct. It is week 3. If you don't, week 0, week 3. It's on September 19th. I'm in the middle of creating my schedule for the fall, and that is a do not miss game.
I was going to say, if you're listening and you haven't been to the Grove, I haven't, we must probably go there. I mean, not only is it the number 1 tailgate, when Katy Perry was there live from College Game Day, it was one of the greatest moments of all time, but that place is going to be tenfold for what it usually is. So really, really good choice there. And you got an early lean for who you like in that game?
Oh, gosh, that's a great question. Oh, honestly, I'm probably going to go with Ole Miss. And the reason why is simply because, first of all, it's there. I'm a firm believer in being self-motivated, but there's nothing like a little hate. Hate is a great motivator when you need it. And also, obviously, more of that team is still the same players. LSU is and look, it's no shade to LSU. Lane Kiffin might put together a phenomenal roster, I just don't know that we're going to be able to see it week 3 at Ole Miss and presumably a night game against a team that has a big returning core. Taking over a new program, even in the NIL era where you have a ton of money, doesn't always mean anything because LSU was the top spender in NIL money last year, and we saw how that worked out. It didn't do anything. And of course, there's the other side of that coin that's Texas Tech, where it did do something. It did work. But I don't know. I think that this might be my hottest take, and people will probably judge me for it. But I think that Lane Kiffin is a coach who can get your team from bad to great. I don't know that Lane Kiffin is a national championship winning coach. So
I actually think that's the perfect way to describe him because a lot of people question, like, what has he won? Why is he really getting kind of all this money? But if you look at what he did for a program that had the most success they had, I mean, how many 10-win seasons was it, with the teams that he had prior to that? But it's like you would lose a random game to like Kentucky where it's like, so instead of 11-1, you're 10-2 and you just miss out on the playoff. This year they finally got in. But yeah, it is 6:30 at night Central Time there, so I can imagine they're going to start to get lathered up probably Tuesday or Wednesday, and just kind of continue the party all the way through. So
yes,
awesome. Well, yeah, let's get into a couple conference previews here. I mean, I know obviously you are very versed in all conferences, but we're going to stick to one kind of near and dear to your heart, and we're going to go over the conference previews, and then one or a couple teams, and then one thing I want to kind of know, just like from your travels, is most underrated like kind of environment and kind of college town, because there's so many cool ones out there that I feel like don't get a lot of love. But yeah, let's start with the ACC. So obviously, huge storyline. Miami being the kind of, I think, overwhelming favorite there, and I mean we saw the ACC in a couple of down years there. Big coaching move, and James Franklin coming from Happy Valley going to Virginia Tech, and he's a guy. Say what you want about him, he's going to get you 9-10 wins. And quite frankly, no disrespect to Virginia Tech, you're not an elite program anymore. You should be beating the door down for 9 or 10 wins. So they're over under win total of 6.5. I know they play the Maryland Terrapins here in like week 2, but would you say over or under that? And I mean, what are your thoughts on the Hokies and Franklin this year?
Yeah, sorry to divert to a different coach really quick, but it will come back around, I promise. There is only one coach in all of college football who every single year when he has taken over a new team, if you bet the over, you won money. And that coach is Bronco Mendenhall. If the under over is 4.5, he will get you plus 2 more wins than that after taking over a program. I think, and this is where it comes back around, I think James Franklin is also that guy. He got a huge recruit today. If I might be mistaken, so I apologize, but I believe he was a Virginia kid as well. And I hate to say this, deep in my core, I love UVA more than anything in the world. My dad coached there forever. Charlottesville is the only place in the United States that feels like home to me. But college football is better when Virginia Tech is good. And having James Franklin in Blacksburg, I think, is one of the most incredible things that he could have done. He kept several of those coaches who are like diehard Virginia recruiting powerhouses, especially if you get the recruits in like the DC area or the DMV area, or like the 757. If you can convince those kids to stay in state and come to Virginia Tech, which James Franklin has already started to do, that's a recipe for success, and everyone in Blacksburg should be excited. And I think that like not knowing a ton about their schedule and who they do and don't play, I haven't like dissected it exactly, but I would take the over.
Yeah, I mean, all they got to do is go 7-5 in there.
Yeah.
I mean, and thank you for saying the 757 because that is much closer to Blacksburg, Virginia. So the Norfolk, Newport News, Hampton, that area. As we mentioned earlier before we went live, I'm sorry, Blacksburg, you're not in the DMV. As a DMV liver, we don't consider you guys the DMV. So thank you for throwing the 757 in there. But yeah, so Bronco Mendenhall, very interesting. Virginia's former coach. I kind of wondered what their win totals were, even in the last year that he had there. But yeah, they were next on my list. Obviously, we saw them kind of come out of nowhere. I mean, we saw that big Friday night win against Florida State. I was actually on Virginia in that game, so props to me. But I got that one from a couple betting analysts. But their win total is 7.5, and we kind of saw Virginia pee down their leg, so to speak. And I believe Chandler Morris returns, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so we saw what you could do with a good transfer quarterback, and the dude's a stud, regardless of what people think about him. Again, schedule aside, we don't know, their full schedule. We haven't really looked at it, but I think they're an interesting one. I would maybe play 7 wins, but I don't see it going much past 7.5. But am I just a little too hard on the Hokie or on the Cavs?
Yeah, I think that that's a tricky one. I think that UVA is a team that either far exceeds expectations or far exceeds disappointments. And again, that's not saying it out of hate. Like everyone knows that, like I said, they mean a lot to me. I think the defensive coordinator, Coach Rudd, is one of the best in the business at doing more with less. And so I think that their defense will be really good. And having a returning quarterback like Chandler Morris, I say this all the time. Great programs are built around great quarterbacks. You will never win games if you have a bad quarterback. And so I think that they'll do well. I think 7.5 is a good line for them. If I had to take one, I would take the under. I think that they're more of like a 7-5 team, especially with a loss in week 1 in Brazil. Or excuse me, week 0.
Unbelievable that they're having college games in Brazil now. It's like, trust me, nobody wants that. But yeah, it's actually heavily juiced to the over at like minus on FanDuel minus 145 to the over. So very interesting play. You're getting good money on the under there. And I kind of thought that they might be a team that everyone's expecting the regression. So I thought it might be kind of closer odds there. But yeah, very, very good analysis. I mean, like Virginia had some really good history there. I mean, under George Welsh. I mean, they put in some good NFL talent. So it's nice to see them kind of back, like you talked about Virginia Tech. And I mean, how much fun is it running down that hill, hopping over the bush, and then running onto the field? Is it still Klockner Stadium or what is it?
It's called, oh gosh. I can hear it in my mind. David A. Harrison Field at Scott Stadium. That's what it's called.
Okay. Was it ever Klockner Stadium? That might have been where they played lacrosse. I forget, but
Klockner is lacrosse. Yes.
Okay. Close enough. Anyway, cool. Well, yeah, great analysis there. I think we're kind of on the same page there. And this is one that I thought was very, very interesting because I believe the quarterback whose name I'm not going to pronounce stayed there, and you get in Oregon, I guess, old defensive coordinator Taj Lapoy, or however his last name is pronounced, coming over to Cal. Cal was one of the biggest overachievers last year. I mean, there was a point where you looked at their schedule after they were 3-0, and you're like, where are 3 losses? They could win the ACC here. I mean, and then they turned around and got steamrolled by Fresno State right after that, right after they were about to get ranked. But another year with another good quarterback, like you're saying, coming under a new coach, their over/under win total is 6.5, heavily juiced to the under. Are the Bears not getting enough love, or is that kind of about what you expect?
I think it's really hard to be one of the West Coast teams in the ACC. You have to travel to the East Coast often. And as much as I think that JKS is a great quarterback, and I'm so happy that Tosh is back at Cal, I think that was a home run hire. I think the main focus of this year for Cal should be them winning the game. They lost to Stanford last year, and that was a bad look. And I think this year is a success if they win that game again. The odds of you winning a football game when you have to travel from Pacific time zone to Eastern time zone or vice versa is very slim. It doesn't happen very often. So I think that puts them at like an automatic disadvantage. And I would take the under because I think they're about a 6-6 team. They have a quarterback. He's sold on the program. I love it. I love that he stayed at Cal. I love big wins like that for the ACC. But I think that it's a pretty brand new staff. They kept some great people. They kept Ron Rivera. They kept their offensive coordinator. Their offensive line coach. They kept a couple guys on the defense. So I think that the staff is there. I think it's more of a building block year for Cal, though.
Yeah, as a ACC guy for the first 30 years of my life before Maryland moved to the Big Ten, I mean, I can't still fathom that Cal is in the ACC. So excellent points there. I mean, case in point, like it was the reverse for a couple of years ago under the Cam Ward when Miami went out there and basically laid an egg in the first half. I think they were down like 30-10 or something like that at the half. So that might be a place to look at. Two teams traveling either way, maybe play the first half under for whatever team is kind of making that travel. But that game almost cost Miami their season. They ended up Miamiing before they stopped Miamiing this past year. But yeah, that was a very, very electric environment out there. So I think that's right around the number, but they're a team that if they can overcome that and they get some success early and believe, I think there's going to be teams that don't want to play them late in the season with like kind of like an ACC title game berth on the line. I think Cal could make some noise like there with that quarterback. And this is probably the one that is more very, very interesting storyline, everybody. Obviously, they're playing TCU, and we're going to have a breakdown of the TCU North Carolina game week 1. We saw Bill Belichick look like a football god after the first drive last year, and then we saw what happened with the rest of the North Carolina season. So they're coming in at 4.5. I haven't heard much on the recruiting end, but you got to think Belichick year 2. Who knows how much he wants to be there? I don't see 5 or 6 wins on that schedule, but again, you don't know the Belichick or we don't know the Belichick factor. At least I don't. Like, it could blow up, or who knows? Maybe they take the next step. I think this is a very interesting one.
From an analysis point, and I said this last year going into rivalry week, UNC hasn't shown, and this is from truly neutral, just like analyzing the situation. UNC hasn't shown me any reason to believe that they would win more than that. Like, they haven't shown me in the last back-to-back years that they're going to beat NC State. So why would I pick that they are? Until it happens, I don't believe it's going to happen. It's the same way with, like, I don't believe that Tennessee is going to beat Georgia because it hasn't happened the last 5 seasons. And so until they prove me wrong, I'm going to pick it every time. UNC has given me no reason to believe that they win more than 4.5 games. They played horribly against TCU last year. And while, yeah, TCU also had roster turnover, I think that there's too many off the field issues and storylines and things and whatever it's always something in Chapel Hill. And so I think that, like, I think that there's, you know what? I think there's potential there. Like, they have all the things. They have the money. They have the Jordan logo. They have the this. They have the that. But, like, they just can't put the pieces together. I can't say it better than this. There's no school in the country that does less with more than UNC. And so until they give me a reason to believe otherwise, that's what I believe. So I would literally, like, I think that's a perfect line. Do I think they win more than 4 games? Probably. They'll win their, like, 2 easier ones. They might win 1 here or there that they shouldn't have won. Their quarterback situation is exactly that, a situation. So I think it'll be a tough year for them. But I will say this, in some piece of it, I think it can only go up from last year, if I'm being honest. I think last year was a pretty disappointing year for everybody who's a UNC fan. For me, it was a great, I was personally stoked, but if you're a UNC fan, it was probably disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, the money thing is so intriguing. It's like you got basketball asking, hey, give us the money that football is getting now and kind of those resources. And UNC's been obviously a basketball blue blood for as long as I've been alive. So it's very, very interesting. It's almost kind of like, if they don't do it now with these resources, how much longer do they kind of go with the Belichick thing and just be like, maybe we'll get a hot young coach that comes in, NIL, can recruit, can bring people, can do all this type of stuff. So I think this is a very interesting year. And then does Belichick, if they go 4-7 or whatever it is, does he want to keep doing this? So a very interesting one there. So I think you and I are probably both in agreement that this is obviously Miami's conference to lose, but maybe give me a team that you think could be a sleeper and a team that you think will be the most disappointing this year. And I mean, I'm going to go again with, I think if Clemson doesn't make the college football playoff this year, I think this can be Dabo's last year too, whether he gets let go or kind of steps down. But maybe kind of, are the Tigers anywhere in the conversation for you?
I can't believe how disappointing watching Clemson last year was with the talent that they have. And it's actually, unfortunately, a great example of, like, that stars don't mean anything if you don't have the coaching staff. And that's not even like shade at the coaching staff. I don't know what the issue is, but it was really disappointing to see players like TJ Parker not absolutely dominate. Like, he was supposed to be one of the best players. And was it just him? No, the offensive line didn't do great. Tristan Lee is like one of their tackles, one of the best in the business. And same, like, I don't know that he had the best year. And I expected more from the quarterback. But I would say there's no world to me where Dabo gets fired. Dabo has done too much for Clemson to be fired. And he will step down, or they'll mutually part ways, or whatever the case may be, but that man's not getting fired from Clemson. I think after this year, if it's a bad year, like, it warrants a discussion. I've said it before and I'll say it again, and you know this, like, I'll never be rooting on the downfall of college football coaches. I don't want any of them to get fired. I understand that sometimes you have to move on from people. I'm not ignorant, but I think that after this year, if it's a disappointing year for Clemson, that it would be a year to have a discussion. I think that the biggest sleeper, oh gosh, I'm going to put myself in such a bad spot. I'm very superstitious. Is NC State. I really believe it. That's not even like me being a homer, because I wouldn't have said it last year. I said Georgia Tech, and so I don't want anyone to think this is me being a homer. It's really not. But I know who the offensive line is. I know that TJ Bailey is a great quarterback. He's in his true junior year. He's in his third year, and the improvement from his freshman year to his sophomore year, where obviously he was thrown into playing, has been incredible. We've got some dogs on the defense finally, and because last year we just lost a lot of players to the portal. Our defensive coordinator left and things like that. So second year of this defensive coordinator, I think DJ Elliott is a great defensive coordinator. He has the right coaches, and he's gotten the players that he needs. So I expect like a huge improvement from NC State. I honestly do. And I think that they are a sleeper. As I really hate saying that, because I am very superstitious and try to keep us under the radar. The most disappointing season, I also hate to say this, I think that Georgia Tech will have a huge drop off. Everybody who knows me knows that Georgia Tech is my side hoe. I love Georgia Tech. Are we allowed to say hoe on this channel? I'm so sorry.
You can say ho, whatever you want to. It's not a family establishment. We're all good.
Yeah, I love Brent Key. He is objectively my favorite head coach in the ACC. I love Dave Dorn, but that's very subjective, right? It's who my dad works for, so I just want that to go on record. But like, Brent Key is my favorite coach. I love him. I want Georgia Tech to be good. I want them to be successful. I want them to finally beat Georgia. And I just think that they will take a drop off from last year, just because obviously they've moved on from Haynes King and Jamal Haynes, just because they're done. And so I think that they will take a drop off, as much as it pains me to say that.
Yeah, I was on I did a show last year with a guy, Rob Donaldson, and we both said, hey, if Georgia Tech ended up in the ACC championship game, it wouldn't surprise any of us. And I think they're projected 4th or 5th that year. So I definitely think they're the ultimate regression candidate. It's like, if you look how they were kind of winning games, it was almost like with smoke and mirrors. I mean, the Clemson game is a perfect example there. I mean, it was just like a missed kick by Clemson, and like, you saw just the talent gap in the athletes. Now, obviously, Brent Key coached them up, and Haynes King was great, but without that stability at the quarterback, I mean, they barely threw a forward pass last year, and they still won games. And it's like, you don't really sustain success in college football with that. Like, I'm rooting for them as well too, because Atlanta was buzzing and Bobby Dodd was buzzing, when, no pun intended, when they were good last year, and it was a great story. But yeah, so I guess before we get to the most underrated environments in town, let's say Miami beats Notre Dame, goes undefeated, loses in the conference title game, and you have another like 3 or 4 loss ACC champion, maybe a 4-loss ACC champion. Is it a 1-bid league, or do you see a way kind of that there's a 2-bid league with Miami still maybe even losing to Notre Dame and losing the conference championship? Like, what is the realm of possibility of it being 2 bids for you?
The only argument that I have is, until however many bids the SEC gets, the ACC should get, because they're just a conference who went 500 against us last year and got plenty of teams into the playoffs. And look, it's not last year, and I know years before that we've had down years where the SEC demolished us, or the Big Ten demolished us, or whatever the case may be. But I think that the days of people saying that the ACC is like the weakest conference in Power 4, it's got to be done. Because if they're the weakest conference in Power 4, what does that make the SEC? Is the Big Ten the top of the dog right now? Yeah, they've won the last 3 national titles. You cannot disagree with that. Yeah, and and the ACC did terrible against the Big 12 last year. But like I said, until other conferences do better than 500 against us, we get as many teams as they get.
So in your travels, and I did hear that Carter Finley at night is just an electric environment, one of the most underrated in all of college football. Obviously, leaving them out, what is the most underrated ACC environment? I assume it's not Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts, correct?
Correct. Oh, okay. Underrated in the ACC?
Yeah, just environment and overall, like college town, like game day experience, like just kind of buzz in the city, things like that.
The most underrated in the ACC, I mean, Clemson's not underrated, and neither is FSU when they're good. So I would say those, and Virginia Tech's supposedly cool when it's popping, but I haven't seen Virginia Tech popping in my lifetime, so I don't know. I mean, I'd probably honestly have to say Charlottesville. Charlottesville when FSU was in town, Scott Stadium, the corner, the lawn, it's popping there. I mean, yeah, I would say if I just genuinely had to say it, that NC State is absolutely the most underrated environment in the ACC. But next, I probably would say Charlottesville. If it's popping in Charlottesville, it's popping.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, I still am an ACC guy near and dear to my heart. Obviously, I hated Maryland leaving, so it's nice to see the schools. I mean, I can root for them in football. I'll never root for Duke or North Carolina in basketball, but in football, have them get 6 teams in. I don't really care. But yeah, a 4-loss ACC champion will not be good for them again. So let's not have that happen. But great stuff on there. So I was going to say we could shift to the Big 12, but let's play the what's more Southern game if you want.
Perfect.
All right, cool. So just a little background. Obviously, Savannah lives in the South now. Spent a bunch of time there from Los Angeles. I'm from Maryland. Spent my whole life here. Maryland, I think, is a Southern state, but obviously the people in the South don't think that. I had 2 stints in Tampa and Mississippi, so that's kind of where this comes in. So, I don't have as much knowledge of the South as you do or experience in there, but, just a couple things. So I'm going to give you 2. You let me know which one is more like defines the South here. And 2 really good ones. And we just got a Raising Cane's here in Maryland, but I'm going to give you Raising Cane's versus Buc-ee's. And if you haven't been to a Buc-ee's, oh my God, like you haven't really lived. So of those 2, which one is like the South?
Raising Cane's on the West Coast.
I'm sorry?
I would say Buc-ee's is more Southern because, like, I had Raising Cane's when I lived on the West Coast.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I hadn't seen it too much. We just got one in Maryland, so that's how I kind of figured it probably wasn't as Southern as the other one. Okay, yeah, and I mean Buc-ee's, like, just shout out to them. Like, I drove down to Mississippi, and every 5 seconds I would see a sign for Buc-ee's, but it was always like nowhere near an exit that I need to get off, or like I didn't need gas. So one day I'm like, I'm just gonna cruise by and see what it looks like, and oh my God, like your head's gonna spin. It's like a Southern Walmart on steroids. You could get everything done there. So if you're making a long road trip down there, I think there's one in Florence, South Carolina, I believe, is the only one that I kind of remember where it was. But yeah, definitely make sure you're hitting them up. So
there's would probably be on 95 in Florida too.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. And so then I think this might be kind of geography based here, but Southern cuisine obviously is great. So you have catfish, whether however you eat it, versus crawfish. Which one would you think is more Southern?
Oh, this is a good question because in California we have crawfish. We just call them crawdads, not crawfish. And we don't really eat catfish. Like in LA, people don't eat catfish. I don't know. Like I think that people would probably say crawfish, but I'm going to say catfish. Like I never had catfish until I went to Tennessee when I was little to visit my family, and we had Cajun blackened catfish. So I'm going to say catfish actually.
As a single guy who actually cooks more than most single guys do, when I lived in Mississippi, I'm like, I got to make myself some catfish. And I couldn't believe how well it turned out. I was like kind of in a very, very clean eating pattern down there, and everything was fried. So I didn't eat much catfish, but the crawfish were my jam there. But yeah, I'd say that's very close. But I think based on kind of like the northern part of the South, I think they eat a lot more catfish. So that's probably the correct answer there. And then the beverages to go with them. Obviously, we hear Darius Rucker mentioned in Southern State of Mind. He went to New York and ordered sweet tea, and the waitress looked at him like he was an idiot. But like, sweet tea versus lemonade, Lynchburg lemonade aside, with Jack Daniels in it, just regular old hot day. You got a sweet tea, you got a lemonade. Which one is more South or Southern?
Definitely sweet tea. There's lemonade in LA. There's not. If you ordered sweet tea in LA, people would look at you crazy.
I think it's made. I mean, the lemonade is just, I think, better in the South. I know there's lemonade everywhere, but just like a traditional Southern lemonade, I don't know what they do down there, but it's definitely, yeah, the sweet tea was something where I kind of had to do a double take, like, and you know how good it was. Like, I just couldn't believe it. So I'm going to give you two states here. This is the last one that we're going to have, and I'll preface this with when I first got to Mississippi. As soon as I unpack my stuff, I'm like, I got to go out grab a drink. Went to a place, shout out Kagan Barrel in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. I walked in kind of wearing a shirt similar to this, and a backwards hat, the outfit, and before I even said one word, she goes, "Sweetheart, I know you're not from here. Where up north are you from?" And A, I don't know what the giveaway is, but B, I said, "Hey, I'm from the South. Maryland's a southern state." And they looked at me like I had three heads, and they said, "It is absolutely not a southern state." So they don't consider Mississippi anything above South Carolina, the South. So it kind of got me thinking, like, Kentucky, obviously in the SEC, Virginia in the ACC, Southern Virginia, very, very South, Northern Virginia, multi-million-dollar counties. Which one would you say is more South, Virginia or Kentucky?
I mean, if people are saying Southern Virginia isn't the South, they haven't been to GW Dansville, baby. Like, Southern Virginia is the South for sure. I've only been to Kentucky like once or twice, and it was to go to college towns, and I didn't feel like it was the South that much at all. I would say that, like, I don't feel like Charlottesville is super Southern, but Blacksburg is pretty Southern. I would say of the two, that Virginia feels more like the South to me than Kentucky.
I will say, as a person who had to drive through pretty much all of Virginia on his way to Atlanta, where I was, cut my trip, and do not speed through Virginia. So that is the only part that I didn't like about it. But yes, you will end up, you'll end up in jail if you're more than 50 miles an hour over the speed limit. So, yeah. So, but yeah, hey, props to the South. The reason I do this is, like, awesome people down there. I mean, I'm such a SEC college football Southern guy. I will end up moving back down there after I kind of leave Maryland, and it's just great environment, great people. They love college football, which is the sport that we love and that we're talking about. So, shout out to the South. Never met nicer people there as a transplant when I came down there. Just kind of embraced me, and they're like, "You're obviously not from here, sweetheart. Everybody's a sweetheart." So, just wanted to give the South some love there. So, but yeah, so I guess we'll switch over to the Big 12. Your alma mater, obviously, as a Big 12 alum, wasn't the Big 12, I believe, probably when you went there, right?
Whoa, how old do you think I am? Yeah, no, it wasn't.
I know how old you are. I just don't remember when they went there, when they went over to the Big 12. So
no, it was not the Big 12.
Okay, I gotcha. So obviously a BYU alum, we'll give that one away. But so actually, we're going to start with one here that I think is a very, very interesting one, and because I love this quarterback, and you've seen, like, Chandler Morris was a perfect example, and he came from one of the same schools, one of his 8 that he went to. So you have Oklahoma State after Mike Gundy finally. What he did for that program shouldn't be overlooked. We all saw the "I'm a man, I'm 40" rant, but he had Oklahoma State a couple games from the college football playoff quite a few times. So they get Eric Morrison, and then he brings over Drew Menstermacher with him, who lit it up as a freshman last year. I mean, North Texas, I think, is still scoring touchdown passes in that game against South Florida. I mean, it was unbelievable. So one good quarterback, brand new coach, 7.5 in a very, very competitive Big 12. Kind of juiced about the same, -110 to the over and the under. I think they're very, very intriguing. I could see it going either way. What are your thoughts?
My immediate thought is the under. If you have to play BYU, Texas Tech, Utah, you're not winning all 3 of those games if you're Oklahoma State. So that's easy for me, the under. First year new head coach, probably different offensive scheme. Even if you brought in a quarterback who fits that scheme, you have players from a previous scheme that you need to figure out how to work into yours. And obviously the best coaches can make their scheme fit the players that they have, but tough. I think it's competitive in the Big 12 this year. And so, yeah, I would take the under.
I don't know when they play those games, but I think they might be a team to start, like, to fade early, but then kind of like take the points, and maybe them just bring upsets later as you are talking about. They get to know the system. Maybe the players start to believe and get better. Maybe they pick off somebody early. And I mean, those teams haven't seen Menstermacher, right? And, like, I mean, the Big 12 isn't what you think about. I mean, it's got a lot of great offenses in there too. So it's nothing that they haven't seen before. But if he plays like he can, higher level of competition, obviously, I think they could make noise. But maybe just, I think it'll probably go under, but they could be a team that I think surprises people in the second half of the season, depending on their schedule. So you nailed So you talked about one right now that was probably the biggest disappointment the last couple of years, and mainly because we didn't know who their quarterback was until kickoff every year or every game. It was Cam Rising, and who I believe finally has no more eligibility left there. And we saw the Kyle Whittingham era, and another guy who what he did for that school was just unbelievable. They were the early Big 12 favorite last year, obviously underachieved. Texas Tech kind of came in and wiped the floor with them early in the year. But their over under win total is 8.5, juice to the over, and we talked about the competitiveness in there. So basically, got to win 9 games. What are your thoughts on the Utes?
There's no way. There's only 2 games I really care about. Obviously, my brother plays them this year. Go Aggies, baby.
Okay, Utah State, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, again, it goes back to the same thing. I know that Scally has been the head coach in waiting for a long time, and I don't have any ill will towards them. But having a first-year head coach with a lot of coaches that left, new coaches that you have, players that, again, they lost their 2 starting tackles to the NFL. They were top 3 round draft picks. I know one went in the first, one went in the third. They lost dogs. And 9 wins is a lot of wins. I always say this, but I will never stop saying it. People, the general public fandom, and this is just so that you learn, has no idea how hard it is to go 1-0 every week. Winning a college football game week in, week out is literally harder than you could ever imagine. 9 wins your first year as a head coach, with basically an entirely new roster, is crazy. It would be impressive. I think at the under. There's no way.
Yeah, I mean they're a very interesting one to me there, because you're right. I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head. The regime is kind of the same, but you don't know what you're going to get there. And I mean, to your point, one thing goes wrong. I mean, look what happened to Baylor after Colorado 2 years ago hit that Hail Mary. I mean, Baylor wins that game there, maybe in the Big 12 championship game there. Yeah. And then it's instead you have Colorado propelled, and it's Baylor did everything they could to win that game, and they lost it on the final play. So it is very, very not easy. So I'm saying that one because I didn't put them on the list here, but I do want to talk about Baylor because I think, obviously Aranda, we saw him come out and be absolutely amazing and, take them there. And then that's a team that I think massively underachieved last year. And they did have a really, really good offense with Sawyer Robertson, a good quarterback. I mean, that SMU game, I made so much money off of that, betting the over there. But Baylor comes in, and I know I didn't prepare you for this one, so my apologies. But 6.5 wins, and it's juiced heavy to the under. Can Baylor rebound at all, or is this possibly maybe Aranda's swan song if they have another 4 or 5 win year?
Can't remember, so correct me if I'm wrong. They got a new offense or defensive coordinator this year, right?
Yeah, I think it was defensive, I believe.
Yeah, and I might be incorrect. I don't know on that. Again, I think that the Big 12 is competitive. I think it's one of those things where truly, if I just had to say my gut feeling, they win some that they shouldn't, and they lose ones that they shouldn't. Again, they beat SMU. That was a great example. Crazy game. At one point, obviously, I want SMU to win. I'll always root for the ACC unless it's UNC. But yeah, I mean, I would say that again, it feels about. You said 4.5. I would say they get 5.
6.5.
Oh, yeah, I'd say they're a 5-win team this year.
Yeah, and I think that maybe that might be one that we talk about for most underrated environment. People don't realize how much money there is at Baylor, and sure. I'm surprised they gave Aranda another year there. But yeah, he's probably. I know we don't want coaches to get fired, but he's one to keep an eye on there. And who knows what they could do? I mean, they have more resources than people give them credit for. So we talked about obviously how competitive the Big 12 is. So I'll give you one more team here. And it seems like we got a lot of new coaches, so I'll bypass Kansas State and we'll go to a coach that came in last year that I thought I liked their win total. I didn't think they would be as good as they were, but Willie Fritz in Houston, the guy could coach his ass off. I mean, what he did for Tulane, and then to see them not miss a beat with Summerall, who, now they have our boy Billy Napier coming in. But what he did at Houston with a kind of Texas A&M outcast quarterback there and picking off a couple wins that they had, a couple teams that they shouldn't have beat. What are your thoughts on Houston this year? And is that a team that you think might find its way into the Big 12 championship?
I don't think they'll find their way into the Big 12 championship. I think that the Big 12 championship is, again, for Texas Tech and BYU to lose, quite frankly. And that might be overachieving for for BYU, but I do still think it's theirs to lose. My opinion now is that that's going to be a rematch of last year. But I do like Willie Fritz. I think that Houston is actually one of the most underrated environments in college football, and so it's a tough place to play. It's loud there. It's a fun place to go. Yeah, I think that they'll overachieve for sure. I think they have a good thing, and if it's not this year, I see they're headed on the right trajectory for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of a slam dunk hire of all the new hires, and he was a hot commodity. And he goes to show that maybe you don't rush to take the job, you take kind of what would be the right job in there. So it's like a lot of these coaches, they think, hey, it's an upgrade, but it's like, hey, let's say you stay back at Tulane and win again, then you'll have your choice of kind of even better jobs in there. So yeah, props to him for taking the right job. And I think you're right. I mean, a couple of things go their way though, who knows? But I do think Texas Tech, despite Sorsby leaving, obviously not on his own, and then kind of everyone, BYU, and then kind of everyone else there. So do you have a, kind of a sleeper that maybe can come in and you think if they ended up in the title game or 9-10 wins, it wouldn't shock you, it would surprise you? Is there a team out there that maybe do that besides maybe Houston?
I have a weird feeling that there's a possibility TCU could be good. Especially if they win game one. And that's just not even obviously I'm hoping that UNC loses, but the team that loses in Ireland is screwed. It is the curse of a century.
See ya. Yeah, you might as well not come home. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2-10.
So that's what I really mean. As long as they win that game, I could see them overachieving this season.
Yeah, it's interesting losing Josh Hoover, who, if Indiana gets another Heisman winner kind of out of nowhere, that would be insane. But that's a team, too. I think Sonny Dykes left, right? Is he not there anymore? Yeah. So, a couple of years ago, the national title game got bludgeoned by Georgia, but pulled off maybe the biggest win in school history, beat Michigan there. And, I think that's a kind of a good underrated environment, too, for that team. So I do like that pick. Sadly, obviously, I don't think it's going to be Colorado. But the Big 12 is by far, I think, going to be the most competitive conference and the most fun one to watch. And unfortunately, I think it is another one bid league just because some of these teams might beat up on each other. You'll still have Iowa State who will be capable of beating people, and it's going to be a gauntlet year in and year out. Obviously you still have Kenny Dillingham and Arizona State who were the favorite last year. They lost Leavitt, but it's an insane conference, and it's sad that last year I thought kind of maybe BYU should have gotten in once they expanded. Obviously, they would be in, but do you see two bids coming from that? Or do you think it's just going to be kind of they're beating up on each other besides everybody besides Texas Tech? And it's like, unless Texas Tech gets upset in the conference title game, they're only getting them in.
I think it should be a two bid league. I will scream it from the rooftops. I don't like a 24 team playoff. I do not.
Absolutely not.
I think it should be 8-team playoff and whatever. It is what it is. But I do think that if you have 24-team playoffs, that you can't have half of the field be the SEC. You have to diversify. You have to dice it up better. So I think that the Big 12 should be a more than one bid league. Do I think that they will be is a different story, because does that fit ESPN's narrative?
Gotcha. Yeah. Hey, the Big 12 are the funnest games to watch for sure. And I love that 11 a.m. kickoff when they're like, oh, we'll have, Texas Tech versus someone. It's like 11 a.m. and they're just going insane in Lubbock, and tortillas are flying everywhere, and there's the food trucks. And is that, of all the places you've been in the Big 12, being partial BYU, but have you been in Texas Tech? I heard it's absolutely insane there.
I've been to Texas Tech. It wasn't when they were like the Texas Tech of today. So I would need to go back. The best atmosphere in the Big 12 is far and by Brigham. There is nothing close to the atmosphere and the beauty. I don't even mean for it to be like Homer of me, because matter of fact, there was a long period of time that I was very at odds with my alma mater and didn't love it. And so it really is the most gorgeous backdrop in college football. If I had to pick a school outside of that, I think what you said was good about Baylor. It's an underrated little school. I know it's a small.
You can boat up to the stadium too, right?
Yeah, it's awesome there. What else is good in the Big 12?
Cincinnati, if they're good, Nippert. I mean,
yeah. I mean, no. I mean, I've been to Iowa State. I haven't been to Iowa. Yeah, I don't know. I would say that BYU and Texas Tech easily take this cake in the Big 12.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we'll get into college football playoff and the Heisman real fast too. We'll just touch kind of briefly on the Heisman. So I believe last year when I did something like this, it was the person who I had on told me in the last 10 years the Heisman front runner, the favorite to start the year, had only won the Heisman one time, and that extended to one in 11 years when Arch Manning poo-pooed against Ohio State and then kind of had no chance from there. And I believe Mendoza started out at something like 1,000-1. I mean, you have CJ Carr, the favorite, coming in. I don't see any way in hell he's not there because I don't see Notre Dame losing any more than one game with their schedule and the Notre Dame rule now. They're going to be in the college football playoff. So I think he's kind of there by default. But I know it's way, way too early and we're going to see the odds change. But give me maybe a sleeper person that people, maybe should put a little chunk of change on, that could kind of be in New York at the end of the year.
It's really a toss-up for me between JKS, the quarterback at Cal, and the BYU quarterback. I think that the best quarterbacks obviously have great offensive line play. But JKS if he can figure out how to be, and he will, because last year he was a true freshman. If he can figure out how to be more consistent instead of, like we mentioned, you win a huge game and then you score 0 points against San Diego State. Like you literally cannot let that happen if you want to win the Heisman. But I do think that that is a name to be looking out for. And I don't know, I didn't even check the odds. I don't want to know. I didn't want to look because I wanted to go into it blindly and think about it. But I think he's definitely a sleeper pick just from that standpoint. If he can learn to find that consistency, even if it's at a lower production than his best games, I think it's him. But I will also say, and you didn't ask for two, so I apologize. There's no world to me where Arch Manning isn't in the conversation this year. I went to 3 Texas games last year, one of those being the Red River and then their bowl game, and just the improvement from the Red River shootout to the bowl game that I saw in Arch Manning over the season was literally incredible. So.
Yeah, and if you're betting the Heisman, do yourself a favor. Don't bet it now unless you're betting a long shot now. Find someone in that range of if you look at Terry Mensah, Gunnar Stockton, Sam Levitt, Jaden Mayava, Marcel Reed, all from 1,600 to 2,700. I mean, you kind of get down the board a little bit. And you want to look at people, like you said, hey, if this person figures it out, because people are going to fall in love with those people too. And they're going to fall in love with JKS. They're going to fall in love, obviously, Arch. The second he plays well, it's going to go, skyrocket. So don't bet the Heisman now because it's going to change so much in 4 or 5 or 6 weeks. You could end up getting a better number on a person now. So bet that long shot. Just keep your money tied up on them, and then you could kind of pivot there going out. So that's my advice for betting the Heisman. You're just asking to burn your money if you bet the favorite right now, albeit, these odds, CJ Carr is the favorite at plus 750, where I think Arch was maybe even minus money last year. So that was just absurd. But at a plus 800 for Arch to start on FanDuel, I don't hate that coming in as the second favorite, to your point there. So we'll go to the college football playoff, the last unfortunate year of the 12-team playoff. It was kind of starting to grow on me. I thought 8 is the perfect number as well, too. But the 12-team was starting to grow on me despite the lack of good matchups in the first round there. But we saw last year a couple of teams that, as much as I hated Penn State, I thought it was an absolute lock. They were there. Penn State, LSU, Clemson, all ranked in the top 5. None of them sniffed the college football playoff. So certainly you got the likes of Oregon, pretty much a shoo-in, Notre Dame, pretty much a shoo-in, Miami, Ohio State, Georgia. Any of those teams, can we see a team that might be this year's Clemson or LSU or Penn State that just kind of falls out of there and doesn't even make the playoff? Is there one that you think, or, who would be the biggest possibility if there isn't one?
Of those teams that you named, it's Miami, because same thing. They lost so much production in the trenches. And for how much everyone hated Carson Beck, the man knew what it takes to get to and to play in and to win championship games. And experience is never to be undermined. They lost their whole defensive line, who was, and I, again, preach this from the rooftops, Ruben Bain Jr. and Akeem Mesidor are the 2 best defensive of ends I have seen play in my lifetime, like in a long time.
Who cares if you have T-Rex arms, right? Like, who cares about that, right?
No, literally. Like,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
were so good. They lost them. They lost their nose. They lost their tackles, Bell and Maui Goa, and they lost Carson back. And so I just think that, like, do I think they're going to completely drop off? No. Do I think they'll still do well in the ACC? Yes. Do I think that they have good coaches? Yes. But I do see them dropping off. And of those teams that you said, that would be my biggest pick for dropping off.
So yeah, so Miami coming in at minus 300 to make it and plus 230 to miss. So the to miss number isn't as lopsided as I thought it'll be. So kind of some good thinking there too, because if they lose that Notre Dame game, there's not really much margin for error for them to kind of get through the ACC there. So obviously we see who's going to be this year's Indiana. Last year, 2 years ago is Indiana. Last year was still Indiana. A couple of new coaching hires in there. I don't think there's going to be anyone that'll have the impact that Sig did. As much as I love Bob Chesney, I don't think UCLA can take that next step this year. Obviously, Lane going to LSU should have them back in there. They're plus money. Is there a team kind of outside of, the traditional 8 to 9 that you think wouldn't be shocked if I see them in there and maybe throw a little shekels on them?
It doesn't have to be a coach with a team with a first year head coach, right?
No, anybody. Yeah.
Yeah. I really think it will be a team that's like, this might be the craziest take. This really might be the craziest take. I think it'd be a team like Florida, to be honest. I say it doesn't have to be a first year head coach, and I pick a first year head coach anyways. But there's no expectations from the standpoint of like, could it really get worse? No.
Right.
You have a brand new coach. Playing with no expectations is a lot more freeing than playing with huge ones. And so I don't know. I think the SEC needs to watch out. There's a lot of teams in the SEC that have a first year head coach or have a new quarterback or this, that, and the other. And playing at the Swamp is no easy feat. Again, a great example. Lane Kiffin goes to the Swamp at Ole Miss, loses, and that's him out of the college football playoff. And so I don't think that Florida is to be overlooked this year.
Yeah, so Florida coming in at plus 360 on FanDuel to make it. If you look, Tennessee is plus 340, and I know you talked about, Tennessee needs to prove it. So you would think that gap will be higher given the season that Florida had. The most amount of talent actually in the SEC based on the last couple of years of like people that they're putting into the NFL, Florida had a shitload of dogs. I mean, they had dudes, and it was just if they could complete a forward pass and their quarterback didn't not live up to the hype, they could have beaten anybody. So I really, really, really like that one. And I think John Summerall is going to be one of the newest coaches or the newest hot coach that kind of gets it. I like his vibe and, that type of stuff. If it's not Florida this year, I think they're going to be obviously ranked high next year to start. But yeah, getting them at that value right now, maybe bet it now, because if they win a few games, you're going to see that number go exponentially down. So awesome. Well, Savannah, really, really appreciate it. Love talking college football. You got some people in here making fun of Alabama, as I'm a Alabama fan. You got some Byron Brown from USF, and nine last seasons for UNC where they've been irrelevant. You only said 5, so that person added 4 more on there. So
he's talking about the fact that Georgia has beaten Tennessee 9 seasons in a row.
Fair enough. Yeah, last year was the Gunnar Stockton coming out party there, where it's like that guy just showed that he could actually carry a team, and that game was college football porn. If you don't watch college football, go rewatch that game. That was absolutely incredible. But just give everybody a plug where they can find you again, and then we'll obviously have to do this again sometime during the season.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me on. You can find me at Savannah Tujague, number 2, letter J, on Twitter and TikTok mostly.
And go Pack, right?
Yep, go Pack. Always go Pack.
Go. All right, well, have a good one. All right.